Go ahead.
So this is our case study presentation on the Volkswagen emissions scandal. I'm Dalvin Long.
I am Cesar Shahadi.
I'm Robert Patillo.
I'm Jen Lee.
I'm Francesca Prado.
I'm Maria Ha.
So I will begin by introducing this Volkswagen crisis. But before I do that, I would like to give some general facts about Volkswagen as a company. So in 1937, Volkswagen was founded by the German labor group, who was affiliated with Nazi Germany in the city of Berlin, Germany, and were known as one of the most luxury vehicles in the 1930s. Fun fact, most Germans were not actually able to afford a Volkswagen vehicle, and only 1 out of 50 Germans were able to purchase one. Another fun fact is Adolf Hitler was actually part of the production of the very well-known Volkswagen Beetle. So the context or the general knowledge of our presentation is in 2015, Volkswagen distributed 3-liter diesel engines that were known to have defective software in more than 500,000 of their vehicles in the United States. This issue was confirmed by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, after testing concluded that the engine software was in fact defective. So the general purpose of our presentation about this crisis is to present in-depth research on how Volkswagen responded to this crisis, relating certain communication theories to the scenario, and deciding whether Volkswagen's response was successful or not. We want to show viewers that what makes this a crisis as a whole and how to learn from this crisis if another one similar to this were to occur. So here are some more in-depth details about this crisis. In September of 2015, researchers at the University of Virginia discovered that Volkswagen began installing a defective device into their diesel engines. Volkswagen began installing these defective diesel engines starting from their 2008 diesel engines until being caught in 2015. This software enabled the Volkswagen vehicles to pass emission tests under laboratory conditions while emitting 40 times the level of pollution allowed in the United States during normal use. The software was installed in about 11 million diesel vehicles worldwide, including 590,000 in the United States. There generally was no crisis prevention plan since it was a little bit too late to prevent this crisis as the diesel engines were already broadly distributed worldwide. Finally, within 2 weeks after the crisis occurred, Volkswagen stock lost about 40% of its value. This resulted in investors halting business with Volkswagen as the company's value continued to decline. This also shows how losing the loyalty and trust from Volkswagen buyers can ruin the company's reputation overall.
Okay, so for the Volkswagen emission scandal, we applied the situational crisis communication theory, which, as described by Combs, only has 3 main types of crisis, which are accidental, preventable, and victim. So the type of crisis we believe this one to be is preventable because if they simply stopped the software from being implemented in vehicles from 2008 to 2015, they wouldn't have had this crisis. Their lack of response or lack of investigation into the software claims is the reason why they had such a large crisis. So they showed 3 response strategies, which could be seen as denying, and then the second one is when they apologized and like took responsibility, and then the third one is when they like diminish it, like their role or involvement. Next slide. So the first step they took to kind of like use the situational crisis communication theory was when Martin Winterkorn, he stated that the company broken the trust of customers and the public in 2015. But then at the same time, 2 weeks later, he stated that he stated in simple terms that the company did not take any responsibility and he specifically had nothing to do with the software being implemented. One of the other reasons why they also did diminish / deny is because a year before when the concerns were actually brought up, in 2014. They said that the data returned false because there were technical glitches, even though he didn't have any like awareness of the software. He should have investigated it more deeply. So one of the reasons why this crisis also gained a lot of like traction is because they were inconsistent across their business. So Michael Horn, who from the first day of the crisis appearing, he took responsibility for it in the U.S. While Winter Korn, which is the CEO of Volkswagen in Germany, denied, took responsibility, and then again diminished. So this is where we see that crisis really take place, because they kind of had a U-turn on their response.
According, can you go back?
Go ahead.
According to the situational crisis communication theory, crisis responsibility would have been an important factor during the crisis. And in order to make the business team responsible to stakeholders, taking responsibility for the event immediately and working towards resolving it would have been the best option. Since the inconsistent responses to the issue made Volkswagen look like an unreliable company, one of the biggest consequences that Volkswagen faced due to the scandal is that its stock lost 40% of its value due to the negligence and unreliability to its stockholders.
So now I'm also going to discuss apply the Volkswagen emission scandal to the theory we covered from class and discuss it in detail, which is the situational crisis communication theory, as we discussed before. Volkswagen used attack, deny, justification, and excuse tactics in the deny and diminish strategies categories. So for the attack tactics, Volkswagen first blamed the emission cheating scandal on a group of software engineers. For the deny tactics, the executive from the Volkswagen doesn't want to take the responsibility. Winter can deny any wrongdoing, and the new CEO, Matthias Müller, said they didn't lie for this. So for the justification tactics, Volkswagen first claimed that it has returned false data due to the technical glitches. For the excuse tactics, Volkswagen tried to diminish their intent to do harm by stating that the engineer couldn't meet the US low emission standard within the time frame and a limited budget. Yeah,
So in an article by Charles Riley, he stated the settlement with Volkswagen was announced as German prosecutors charged Winterkorn with giving false testimony to a 2017 inquiry. He said that he was first informed that some diesel Volkswagen cars had been equipped with software that could be used to cheat emissions tests in September 2015. Winterkorn did not obtain any knowledge of the use of software that was unlawful under US law on July 27, 2015, nor did he knowingly accept this, Volkswagen said in a report by its executive boards. In a crisis like this, Volkswagen would have to take their reactive stance and figure out a way to gain the trust back of their consumers in order to still be a successful and reputable company moving forward. The next step being accepting responsibility for being unaware of the specific software being used. Telling the truth is necessary for minimalizing the damage caused by the crisis and gaining back the trust of the consumers. The crisis also affected many other brands such as Audi and Porsche, which fall under the Volkswagen Group.
Move on to the next slide.
Okay, so Volkswagen said on Tuesday that as a result of the crisis, top management paid would be cut by 39% to 3.2 million euros. The spending has sparked the bitter dispute between workers and the German state of Lower Saxony, the company's second largest shareholder, over the whether to scrap the generous bonus, and the Volkswagen groups has one of the highest paid executives in the car industry. Volkswagen admitted last September that 11 million cars worldwide has cheated on emission tests, the biggest corporate scandal since 2009. The scandal wiped billions of euros of Volkswagen market value, forced out long-time CEO Winterkorn, and tarnished Volkswagen's global image. The framework agreement with U.S. regulator came after Volkswagen has forced to delay its 2050 result due to be released in February, aimed uncertainty about the financial impact of the scandal. Earlier this month, automaker delayed the release of the first quarter result from late April to May 31st.
So for the lesson we learned from the Volkswagen scandal, the first one is pre-crisis planning is essential to be prepared for the crisis situation, since it can identify internal problems in advance to prevent the risk in the future. Also, it can estimate and prevent the potential impact of the crisis scenario. The second is to utilize a unified response so that no message can be left out for interpretation. So if employees respond differently in a company, it breaks the trust of the public and harm the company's reputation. The third is hold the promotion and marketing when a scandal breaks out. Quitting the promotion and marketing is a move to show the public that the company is focused on fixing the problems rather than persuading people to spend more money. And this is a time to put the issue over the profit. And the next one is that the brand advocates to do all the talk. Since even when the bad news break out, the loyal customer base can be a strong driving force to help company to against the bad comments on social media platforms and redeem the reputation. At this time, the best move for the brand is to keep quiet and not to irritate the public. So customer loyalty is important, especially on social media platforms. And the last one is always telling truth to your customers and news media, which is the first step to redeem the reputation of the brand. Since companies should tell the truth and make a sincere apology to the public when the emission scandal first broke, since it's a smart choice to always make an accurate and open response to the news media. This way, company won't keep losing trust from their customers. The company should show their concern to the customers by telling the truth. Yeah, so.
These are some more lessons we have gathered as a group from the Volkswagen scandal. We have learned that brand advocates and loyalty are important in a crisis situation to help cope with negative online comments. To elaborate, this means that using brands that the company has been loyal to could help rebuild the reputation of a brand that is in crisis. Partnering brands could uplift the broken reputation. Establishing a mechanism to encourage a culture of integrity and open communication in the workplace is necessary to reduce risk and avoid crisis situations like this, which means that companies should encourage employees to be honest and communicate with one another in order to avoid situations like this. If there was more communication within the workplace, then there wouldn't have been so much miscommunication and inconsistent responses when the crisis broke out to the public. And it is important to align to the product standard to avoid damage to the future reputation of the brand. Based on the situational crisis communication theory, this would have been categorized as a preventable crisis simply because Volkswagen was to blame and would have been able to avoid the situation if they just followed the standard guidelines to the vehicle model and didn't try to add an extra modification for their own benefit.
So now for the conclusion, the scandal was caused after the EPA found that Volkswagen was responsible for creating and installing software in their cars to deceive emission tests, making it clear that Volkswagen knowingly did this and did not make a mistake, causing plenty of backlash and lost trust. In a crisis like this, Volkswagen would have to take the reactive stance and figure out a way to gain back the trust of their consumers to still be a successful and reputable company moving forward. In the future, pre-crisis planning is necessary for these kinds of situations, as they really did not have a good response and had employees lying about what was happening just for the statements to later be retracted. This ultimately led the company executives to fail to establish a successful crisis communication plan and led them to a crisis that they are still recovering from to this day.
And these were the references that we used for our presentation. And thank you for listening.